We all saw what happened to Volodymyr Zelensky the last time he went to the White House. Next time he's taking backup. European leaders from the UK, France and Germany will accompany the Ukrainian President on his visit to DC tomorrow, 3 days after Donald Trump met Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Well, joining us live now is the former British ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton. Tony, good to see you this morning. Thanks for your time. So, is this backup likely to help Ukraine at the White House? Or will a sort of ambush just peeve Trump off?
Yeah, I don't think an ambush is very likely on this occasion. Yeah, I mean, the reason why the posse is formed up is to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But actually, I mean, there's been lots of noise about the Alaska summit and all of that. But actually, it looks as if the general shape of an agreement is emerging. The key point being that the Russians have now accepted that the West, the US in particular, can offer Ukraine strong security assurances for what happens after they've made peace, which clears the way for an awful lot of other things. And there are big arguments still left, arguments about territory, arguments about sanctions and so on. But astonishingly, after all the comments about Trump's ineptitude and all of that, this summit looks as if it's been quite productive. And tomorrow's meeting between Zelensky, backed up by the Europeans, and Trump on the other side, my instinct is that there's quite a lot of useful business that they can do.
So you mentioned territory there, Tony. Will Zelensky have to give up the Donbass?
No. No, that's too strong. He's under pressure. The Russians want some sort of recompense for the sort of deal they're offering. And eventually, Zelensky will have to make a judgment between what concessions he's willing to make on territory or whatever, on the one hand, and the assurance of long-term security for his country on the other. That's a decision that he has to make. But it seems to me pretty clear that if you can get firm Western assurances of continued Ukrainian survival as a state, that's a very big thing for him to win.
I mean, the Donbass is resource rich, plenty of coal there, and there is that extra security buffer too that you referred to. Is that why Putin wants it?
I mean, everybody tells me that the Donbass is a dump, actually, but it's obviously being played up for current negotiating purposes. I doubt that it is hugely important in the scale of the debate that's going on. The debate, frankly, is about the continued survival of the Ukrainian state as a democratic, Western-aligned country, or the continuing war with Russia, which could, if it went very badly wrong, lead to the extermination of that state. Now, again, as I say, it will be for the Ukrainians with their backers, the Europeans, to judge which way to fall on that. But my instinct is that finally they will settle for something that gives them as big a guarantee as they can get and as big a state as they can get. Now, there's a lot of, as I say, negotiation to be done for that, but it started rather well with the assurances which Trump has extracted from the Russians in terms of the US ability to give security guarantees.
I do want to ask you about Alaska, but first of all, just back on Europe. I mean, how much pull does Europe really have here when the central players are the US, Russia and Ukraine?
Well, Europe has some traction because Europe is responsible for a lot of the sanctions on Russia.
Right, yeah.
And therefore, to the extent that lifting sanctions becomes part of the negotiation, Europe will have to be involved. Europe is also involved because Ukraine is looking for some sort of Western backers against what they see as possibly very damaging pressure from Trump. So they'll be there tomorrow at the meeting, and it's going to be a rather interesting meeting in the White House. But my guess is that the Europeans don't want to get themselves into a directly antagonistic relationship with Trump, so they're not going to completely torpedo the outcome of Alaska, and they'll find a way of smoothing the process of getting Zelensky into line with what the Americans have already all offered, towards moving towards a peace settlement. It's not settled by any means. All sorts of things could go wrong. But my feeling is that actually, astonishingly, after all the noise of the last couple of days, things have moved significantly in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, what were your observations of Alaska? Do you think, I see Donald Trump getting criticised quite heavily, I guess depending on what publication that you're looking at. But I mean, he did get the meeting. and there is progress, there's momentum that is happening now. I mean, what are your thoughts on it all?
Well, I've just said, yeah. I mean, there is momentum happening. And I mean, there's been a price that's been paid. There's been lots of criticism of how Putin has been treated like a normal human being and given a red carpet and all that sort of stuff. To which my reaction is, okay, but you're not going to be able to make peace in Ukraine without talking to Putin. And the more you can grumble him and get him interested in a decent outcome to the process, the more likely it is that you're going to get a process. So I'm rather inclined to reject that sort of criticism. There is a deep question about how ready Putin deeply is to let Ukraine survive as an independent state. But the evidence, as I've said, is that if he is willing to allow the United States and the West more generally to give security assurances to Ukraine, then he's resigned to the existence of an independent Ukraine. And that's the key thing that people are arguing about, really. We get there, then sorting out the other stuff, not easy, but much more doable.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And like you said, big day tomorrow. It'll be interesting to watch. Sir Tony Brenton, good to have you with us today. Thanks for your time.